So as she mentioned, I did a lot of work for government of Alberta in the Ghost River Forest Land Use Zone. I think it was the public land use zone when I was doing my thesis. So I had to go out there and participate with a lot of people out there. So I'm going to touch on a tool that was created during my master's. So my first question to you, and I'm going to try to get you to think a little bit, is what does recreating in Alberta mean to you? It can mean a lot of different things to different people. Is it hiking on one of Alberta's many trails? Is it jumping on an ATV, riding on a snowmobile, jumping on a horse? I don't know what you're going to be doing. I know recreating for me these days is looking out my window at all these people having all this fun and my 2-year-old throwing Cheerios at me, and while I'm wishing I was out there with them. Not fun. But anyway, while you're out there on these trails, when are you out there? When are you out there? Where are you out there? There's lots of different times you could be there, lots of different locations. Could be a nice sunny day, could be on a gravel road, it could be on a muddy road, who knows? Each offers something else. My whole thought here is that everybody has a different perspective on what is fun, what they are looking for, and that changes throughout the year. And while you're on these trails or doing your recreating activities, are you thinking of the consequences? Are you thinking about what kind of disturbance are you having on sensitive habitats in the area? Are you thinking about your footprint in the stream as you're crossing it? I would wager to say most people in here are fairly conscientious of their actions, and most people would actually think of some of these things while they're doing stuff. But can we be sure that everybody is thinking about these things? I wish that was true, but I don't think it is the case. So, as I said, recreation can mean different things to different people, and each item has its own impact and its own degree of impact. And it changes with perspective. So managers must create, or the creation will occur without management. We need to be able to plan for the future, or the future will just happen and we don't know what that will be. So as a case in point, I just wanted to bring up a quick graph just to show you sort of the OHV sales in Alberta over the past 20, 30 years. As you can see, it's exponentially increasing. It's growing quite rapidly. And if we don't plan for things like this, then we could find ourselves in trouble fairly quickly. So as this interest increases, managers will be under more pressure to provide that access. It is a time intensive and a monetarily intensive undertaking to do this. And without tools to help planners and managers to do this job, then we're going to keep having problems. So, tools are needed to help make decisions more quickly for managers, to help them better plan, to help them have more confidence in their plans, and to plan for the future for the recreating public. So there's a lot of things to consider when we're talking trails, constructing trails in Alberta or pretty much anywhere. You could be an ATV user, you could be a horseback rider, you could be a hiker. The type of trail that you're creating is probably one of the 4 most considerations. There are other considerations, the type of slopes that you want to encounter. Are you talking about a family with, like me, with my 2-year-old out for a stroll on a trail? Or are you talking about a serious avid hiker who wants to go up the side of, I don't know, name your nearest mountain? There's a lot of these considerations that we need to think about. And they're very hard to think about all at the same time. So the impact of all these different activities can have is related to the risk to all of these different components. So the perspective enters back into this a little bit again, just because the level of risk is perspective. So we need to keep that in mind, perspective. So 10 years ago, if I wanted to build a trail, I'd have my 30-meter resolution digital elevation model like Chris had shown you, derived from 90 meters. So that's a very coarse data set. We'd have our aerial photography and our provincially mapped hydrology, and we'd have our trusty old compass and GPS. And this is a picture of a 30-meter DEM with the provincial hydrology layer on top of it, course. So if you try to plan a trail through that, you might run into a few extra instances where you might encounter some environmental degradation. So you try to manage for all of these different considerations with your 30-meter resolution data and a couple of other information layers that you have on hand, and you'll be pressed to make a decision. Without the ability to manage all of these different considerations and with confidence, confidence is a large factor, then we will forget to consider some items. So now today, we have this nice new LiDAR data set, and we have all the different products that can be derived from this data set, like the wet area mapping tool. But there are lots of other tools out there as well. But we still have our compass and GPS, because no tool, as has been mentioned before, will replace boots on the ground. So there's a nice picture of the nice 1-meter LiDAR data with your WAM on it, as you've previously seen. So just as a little sidebar to this, I want to show one of the other layers that can be input or predicted within the trail tool. Rutting sensitivities are one of the largest considerations in the construction of a trail. So the ability to predict where these are going to occur is a valuable item. So I went out to the field as part of some of my field seasons in the Ghost, and went out and did a whole bunch of measurements across the landscape. I took soil samples with soil core. I went out and I tested the compaction of the soils. I tested moisture conditions, and all geo-referenced. I then traveled down a whole bunch of trails. I think I did about 70 kilometers of trails, and gauged the disturbance to these trails in terms of severity of rutting, and I gave them all a class. So from all that field work and from driving down the trails, I was able to create a prediction map of where rutting will occur. And as you can see from the map, I'm not sure if you can see the white lines and the different colors inside of the white lines. Those would be where I turned on the GPS and recorded a various level severity rutting occurrence. And you can see now the predicted rutting map underneath, and it shows a fairly high conformance to what was seen. So that was just one of the different layers, but there's many other layers: slope, ruggedness, earthwork requirements, vegetation removing. All of these different layers need to be considered. And so with high resolution products, high resolution results can be achieved. But now we still need theory and methodology of bringing all these different layers together, because they're not the same. They're not apples to apples. So we need to bring them all together in a common manner so that they can speak with each other and not overshadow the effects of other considerations. This is the trail tool in a conceptual model view. So we have all the different considerations lining the periphery of the square, and they all feed into a user sensitivity. So that's your perception. What is your perception of the risk to this item? So slope, do I find slope risky? Do I find crossing streams risky? Do I find having to go out there with a chainsaw and knock down a path? Is that a risk to me? These are all things that you can start to incorporate into the planning of a future trail. And so the conceptual model gets constructed inside of a real model, a tool, and this is the original iteration of the trail tool that I created there 2-3 years ago. And inside there we have, again, where we have our perception. So we have these nice slide bars that we can slide left or right and start asking ourselves questions. And we don't have to ask ourselves the question once. We can ask ourselves that question twice. We can start looking at it from different perspectives and start trying to identify the different routes that we could take. Because there's 100 ways to go on a landscape, 360. So once we have all of our different layers loaded up, we have all of our different sensitivities, we have all of our different perspectives considered, we start creating trails. So here we see 3 different pinky white lines, all detailing a different profile of risk on the landscape. So we see one here, well actually I'll slide to the next slide, where I just chose two slides, or two trails. One that was a proposed route by an organization, the top graph, and the bottom graph is one that the trail tool produced. In the top graph, the top line, the blackish gray, is the topography, the profile of that trail, and the blue line would be the wet area map prediction of where the water table sits for that route. And there you can see some numbers correlating to the location of culverts and the size of culverts that would need to be installed based on a 100-year flood event. So these are all parts of the trail tool that are outputs, and we can start comparing profiles of the different trails that are created. We also get a lot of descriptive information about each trail. So here we have the as proposed trail and the trail tool result. We have two trail stream crossings, about double the wet area interaction in the as proposed. It's a little bit longer of a route in the trail example, but we also deal with less slope. So this is where now we can start getting into some trade-off analysis, which is a very important tool. This is where the trade-off analysis starts to come in. So we can start playing with the tool, playing with our perceptions of what a trail should look like for the area, and we can start comparing them against each other and against proposed routes or your hand-bombed lines in there. So this is not a really specific example, but route number 7 was a proposed route, and all of the other routes next to it were predictions on where to go based on different sensitivities. And we can start to gauge what the reductions in risk can be based on our different perceptions. So in conclusion, given current and future demand for access, we need to help planners make these decisions. The amount of time that is required to go out and field verify using the trail tool versus going out and guessing where you want to go. There's huge time savings in doing using the trail tool. Even if you don't choose an actual trail to use, it'll help guide you and help your search for an appropriate path. In a multifaceted problem space where you have multiple competing ideas and perspectives and considerations, you need tools in order to be able to bring them all together and start thinking about them together. Without that, you might as well just look at one or two different considerations, because you can't consider them all. Computers are, for the most part, smarter than us.